welcome to the Rob Burgess Show. I'm, of course, your host, Rob Burgess. On this, our 43rd episode, our guest is Jonathan Fowler. You first heard Jonathan Fowler on episodes 2, 10, 20, 21, 29, 30, 31, 32, 34, and 35 of the podcast. Jonathan graduated with a BA in History from Indiana University in 2006. He's an unabashed left-wing political junkie. He has lived and worked in South Korea for over 9 years, trying to help the citizens of that great nation, hopefully, talk pretty one day. And now, on to the show.
Hello.
Hey, Ja.
Hey, Bob, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. I think we got our times mixed up because it's 12:45 over here, but I guess, yeah.
Oh, really?
Okay, this is 1 hour later, but yeah, I figured you weren't going to call.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I thought it was an hour earlier, I guess, than it is, but are you okay to do a little bit now?
Yeah. I guess neither one of us majored in math.
I guess not.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, big news day. I think we're calling it, like, what, hashtag Golden Gate or something?
That's one of them, yeah. I've seen a lot of puns based off of that, so, yellow journalism and doesn't hold water, and, these leaks are everywhere.
Yeah, I know. He's, so this time Trump's upset about the leaks?
Yeah, you could say he's being a real wet blanket about it.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think I saw, like, what's his name? Stephen Colbert did a whole thing on this, and he had, like, a 1 minute long riff or something of just puns and stuff, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, well, okay, so how should we start this? I mean, I guess we should clarify.
Well, I mean, that is the question, because other news organizations haven't even really gone into what is contained in this, because as my listeners should know by now, I'm a journalist who is, working for a newspaper that's part of the Associated Press. I'm also a member of the Society of Professional Journalists. There's been a lot of controversy in the journalism community about what BuzzFeed has done by publishing this, and in the front page story that we had in today's paper about this from the Associated Press, they don't even make it explicit what is contained in this dossier. They just talk about how it's, controversial, and it's unverified, and they don't go into any specifics. So, I guess first, before we go into the specifics of the actual dossier, what do you make of other organizations' responsibility as far as kind of informing their readers what is actually in this, since, the seal's been broken, by BuzzFeed, so.
And the seal has been broken.
As they say.
Yeah. Is that intentional, or is that just...
I guess not. I guess I'm on such a track right now, I could probably just do a couple more of these without even thinking about it, so.
Yeah, it might have been like a Freudian slip.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's first clarify exactly what we're talking about, because I think that, for posterity's sake at least.
Oh, sure. Well, do you have the dossier or the report pulled up right now?
I don't have it pulled up, but from what I understand, there was a 2-page report by American intelligence agencies that was delivered to President Barack Obama and President-elect Trump, much as it pains me to say that. And that was talked about in the CNN article.
Well, yeah, there is an accompanying CNN report that we should make sure to mention, because that actually came first, but it didn't go into specifics. But soon after, I guess BuzzFeed just dumped it. So. Yeah,
BuzzFeed dumped a 34-page report, I believe.
I actually have the report pulled up right now.
Okay.
Did you want me to read from part of it, just some of the pertinent parts here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should know exactly what we're talking about.
So this is, and we should say that this was prepared several months ago, and this was prepared by, I believe, the Jeb Bush campaign. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I thought I'd heard that yesterday. So this is opposition research, right? So this is like another campaign trying to dig up dirt on a political opponent.
Another Republican campaign.
Exactly. Right.
I think it was taken over by the Clinton campaign after Trump won the primary. But I think the important thing that's getting lost in all this, hyper partisan. It's bullshit. It never happened. It's not. It's not real news. It's fake news. It's fake news. All this stuff. What we're forgetting is that it started with Republicans, and I think there's a lot of evidence that something really is going on and has happened here.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that soon. But yeah, go ahead and read some part of it.
Well, this is from, and we found out also yesterday, the author of this was a ex-British spy named Christopher Steele, which almost sounds like a made-up name for a spy. But anyway, yeah. So I
think they give you that on day one of the academy.
Right, exactly. At MI6 or whatever.
Christopher Steele.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. He's a 52-year-old, I assume, British man, and he works for a intelligence company now called Orbis, I believe.
Yeah, and we should also say that while this is unverified, this was, as we said, shared with Trump and Obama and at the highest levels of the CIA and everywhere else. So this was at least taken seriously enough to get to that level. So this isn't just some internet rumor. This is at least somebody that has enough credibility with that community that they would pass that high up the ladder. So anyway, go ahead.
Well, and I think to lend more credibility to it, after people were saying, we don't even know who this guy was, he claimed he worked for the MI6, which is, the James Bond organization. James Bond M16 or M15 or MI5?
I believe it's MI6, yeah.
Yeah, okay, but the BBC, the next day, today, BBC came out with another report that said he's not the only source for this.
Right.
Sources for this. So this isn't just like one rogue guy with an axe to grind.
Yeah, I did also see that report, yeah. So this is, there is more, I think we can safely say, than this.
A new word has entered our political lexicon. Compromat. That's Russian for a dossier used to blackmail someone. CNN reported last night that Russian intelligence agencies had obtained compromising material about Donald Trump. He's condemned the reports. The president-elect tweeted, "Fake news, a total political witch hunt," all in capitals. This morning he tweeted, "Russia just said the unverified report paid for by political opponents is a complete and total fabrication, utter nonsense, very unfair." Later posting that Russia has never tried to use leverage over me. I have nothing to do with Russia, no deals, no loans, no nothing. So how long have these allegations been circulating? Our Washington correspondent is Paul Wood.
The rumours or the allegations or whatever you want to call them have been circulating for a number of months now. I saw the report compiled by the former British intelligence officer back in October. He is not, and this is the crucial thing, the only source for this. I was also told by a man I'll call a member of the US intelligence community back in August that he had been told by the head of an East European intelligence service that the Russians had compromat or compromising material on Mr. Trump. It's very, very difficult, of course, to talk to US intelligence people. They're breaking the law if they talk to you. But I did ask somebody with connections in the CIA to pass a message to them, and I got a message back that there was allegedly more than one tape, not just video but audio as well, on more than one date, in more than one place, in both Moscow and St. Petersburg. Now, having said all that, nobody's seen this tape. We're talking about intelligence here, and nobody should believe something just because an intelligence agent says it's still less an anonymous intelligence agent. But it is viewed as credible by the CIA, and that's why it landed on President Obama's desk last week, on the desk of the congressional leadership, and was given to Mr. Trump as well. And even congressional Republicans are talking about investigations, and Democrats, I know, are talking about impeachment.
But it's still presumably impossible to prove any of these allegations.
Well, if the Russians have blackmail material, they're hardly going to release it. So it really comes down to the credibility of these FSB sources, these Russian intelligence officers, quoted by a British intelligence officer who was employed by an opposition research firm, working first for a super PAC supporting Jeb Bush and then for an anonymous Democratic donor. So, of course, it is all extremely problematical.
Paul Wood.
So anyway, the title of this is U.S. Presidential Election, Republican Candidate Donald Trump's Activities in Russia and Compromising Relationship with the Kremlin. And I believe this is like the two-page summary that they received, because this is just kind of an overview. But anyway, the summary is that the Russian regime has been cultivating, supporting, and assisting Trump for at least 5 years. And we know that's true because we have tweets that say, from the Miss Universe pageant back in 2013, he went back and visited Russia. There was that cryptic tweet where Trump says, "I wonder if Putin will be my best friend." So we know that he's had a relationship in Russia for at least that long, if not longer. Anyway, back to the text. AIM, endorsed by Putin, has been to encourage splits and divisions in Western alliance. And that's an important, back to my commentary, but that's an important feature of this, is that it's not so much that Putin is so big of a fan of Trump, it's just that he's interested in sowing chaos in the Western world wherever he can to destabilize NATO and other Western alliances. So, anyway, so back to the text. So far, Trump has declined various sweetener real estate business deals offered him in Russia in order to further Kremlin's cultivation of him. However, he and his inner circle have accepted a regular flow of intelligence from the Kremlin, including on his Democratic and other political rivals. Former top Russian intelligence officer claims FSB has compromised Trump, which I believe FSB is the what the KGB is now, right? Is that correct?
I'm actually a little unclear on this. I thought the FSB was similar to the FBI.
Oh, was it? Okay. Okay. Well, it's a Russian intelligence agency, though, right? Okay. Has compromised Trump through his activities in Moscow sufficiently to be able to blackmail him. According to several knowledgeable sources, his conduct in Moscow has included perverted sexual acts which have been arranged/monitored by the FSB. A dossier of compromising material on Hillary Clinton has been collected by Russian intelligence services over many years and mainly comprises bugged conversations she had on various visits to Russia, intercepted phone calls, rather than any embarrassing conduct. The dossier is controlled by the Kremlin spokesperson Peskov directly on Putin's orders. However, it has not been distributed abroad, including to Trump. Russian intentions for deployment still unclear. Okay, detail. Speaking to a trusted compatriot in June 2016, sources A and B, a senior Russian foreign ministry figure and a former top-level Russian intelligence officer still active inside the Kremlin, respectively. The Russian authorities have been cultivating and supporting Trump for at least 5 years. Source B asserts that Trump operation was both supported and directed by Putin. Its aim was to sow discord and disunity within the U.S. itself, but more especially within the transatlantic alliance. Blah, blah, blah. That's kind of, we already covered that. Okay, here we go. In terms of specifics, Source A confided that the Kremlin had been feeding Trump and his team valuable intelligence and his opponents, including Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, for several years. This is confirmed by Source D, closely associated of Trump, who has organized and managed his recent trips to Moscow, and reported that in June 2016 that the Russian intelligence had been very helpful. Kremlin's cultivation operation on Trump also had compromised offering him various lucrative real estate development deals in Russia, especially in relation to the 2018 World Cup soccer tournament. However, for unknown reasons, Trump has not taken up on any of these. However, here we go, this is the juicy part. However, there are other aspects to Trump's engagement with the Russian authorities, which one which has borne fruit for them was to exploit Trump's personal obsessions and sexual perversion in order to obtain suitable, and this is a new word I learned, compromat, and that's Russian for compromising material, on him. According to Source D, where she or he had been present, Trump's perverted conduct in Moscow included hiring presidential suite of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, where he knew President and Mrs. Obama, whom he hated, had stayed on one of their official trips to Russia, and defiling the bed where they had slept by employing a number of prostitutes to perform a quote-unquote golden showers urination show in front of him. The hotel was known to be under FSB control with microphones and concealed cameras in all the main rooms to record anything they wanted to. let's see, that was confirmed by another source. So we have multiple sources, according to this person, saying that this is true. Skipping down a little bit. Trump's unorthodox behavior in Russia over the years has provided the authorities there with enough embarrassing material on now presidential candidate Trump to be able to blackmail him if they so wanted. So anyway, that's kind of the gist of it. There's more on the summary, but I think that covers most of the basics. And of course, there's more detail later on. But that's kind of the gist of it. So.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, and this, from what I understand, the FBI got this intel in August 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about 5 months ago from now.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the hell the FBI has been doing with this intel, but, clearly, informing the American people, acting on it, this was not on their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed to be.
Yeah. Well, and you combine that with the timing of the Comey letter having to do with Anthony Weiner's, laptop, the timing of that release. It almost looks like there might be a FBI-CIA split, maybe, in who they wanted to be president, possibly. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think this raises a lot of questions. I mean, it's hard to even know where to begin, but, I mean, it's January 13th, and we're about, exactly 1 week away from the inauguration of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, when a hostile foreign government plays a role in the democratic election of a president, and the president doesn't win the popular vote, I mean, if we find out evidence that they significantly impacted the election in such a way that they got their candidate in, and it's clear to most Americans that this guy's going to be bad for America. I mean, we're a democracy, but do you just let that go through? You say, okay, well, all right, Russia, you got us this time, but we'll try again in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you, I don't know. I don't know that I don't know that carrying on with business as usual is the correct response in this case. I just,
Mm-hmm.
The democracy at any cost. I mean, I don't know. Probably. They always say Russians respect strength and stuff, and probably the strongest message we could send to Russia would be to march Donald Trump directly into jail,
Mm-hmm.
hold another election, and be hyper vigilant for their crap. I mean, that's probably the only message they would receive that would be like, I don't know. I don't have an answer for it, but I mean, I'm just saying it seems wildly naive to just treat this like any other election where we have a president that the American people voted for. And there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff here. There's just a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, one part of it is the golden showers, so the water sports aspect of the sexual aspect, which is obviously, yesterday was a bizarre day because that aspect of it was all over Facebook. Everybody was talking about it. But I would check, like CNN, and they have no mention of it. They just have mention of the report. And in the article, they don't really talk about that. They just talk about other stuff.
Right. Well, and then also, when they had that, and this coincided, unfortunately for Trump, with his first press conference since July. So basically all the questions were relating to this, when I'm sure he didn't want to talk about this at all. And we can talk more about the press conference later, because that was a bizarre scene in and of itself. But
yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the golden showers aspect is one aspect of it, and it's the salacious aspect. And whether you think this is true or not, do you really think this would be out of character for Donald Trump?
No.
I mean, soliciting prostitutes in an Eastern European / Eurasian country, doing some sexually perverted and sadistic stuff involving urine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean. And he said in the press conference, and besides, I'm a germaphobe, so
Let me just tell you what I do. When I leave our country, I'm a very high-profile person, would you say? I am extremely careful. I'm surrounded by bodyguards. I'm surrounded by people. And I always tell them, anywhere, but I always tell them, if I'm leaving this country, be very careful, because in your hotel rooms, and no matter where you go, you're going to probably have cameras. I'm not referring just to Russia, but I would certainly put them in that category. And number one, I hope you're going to be good anyway. But in those rooms, you have cameras in the strangest places. Cameras that are so small with modern technology, you can't see them and you won't know. You better be careful, or you'll be watching yourself on nightly television. I tell this to people all the time. I was in Russia years ago with the Miss Universe contest, which did very well. Moscow, the Moscow area, did very, very well. And I told many people, be careful, because you don't want to see yourself on television. Cameras all over the place. And again, not just Russia, all over. Does anyone really believe that story? I'm also very much of a germaphobe, by the way. Believe me.
Yeah, I had two immediate thoughts when he said that. First thought was, well, urine is sterile, so that doesn't really matter. Secondly, this doesn't say that they were peeing on you. It just says that they were doing this on the bed while you watched, where the President and Mrs. Obama had slept, so you could defile it, not that you were in the middle of it. So I don't see that you're actually being a germaphobe affects that.
Yeah, I have. Well, I mean, there are 2 to 3 possibilities as to how this went down that I can imagine in my shit-perverted mind. I mean, number one, Trump was peeing on these ladies on the bed. Mm-hmm. Number 2, the ladies were peeing on Trump on the bed. Number 3, the ladies were peeing on each other on the bed. Maybe number 4, the ladies were just peeing on the bed, but I don't think that's, You
don't hire prostitutes just to do peeing on the bed. I think you do more.
Yeah. When you do when you go down the water slide, you don't go down halfway. You got to go all the way down, right?
Oh my God!
I'm just saying those. I mean, and I would say as a caveat to all of those things, I think there's the high possibility that somebody was drinking this urine too.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean that's my I don't know that's my detailing of possible permutations of what exactly went down in the bedroom. But in addition to that aspect of it, which, like I said, is the salacious aspect, there's also the mention of Alpha Bank, which some people have tried to discredit the report by mentioning that they misspelled the name, which is ALFA.
Yeah.
They had misspelled it as ALPH.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I don't know if that's just like a romanization of the Russian, or, the more accurate romanization of the Russian word or something, but I happen to remember something from a long time ago, earlier during the campaign, which, maybe it was 6 months ago or something. I don't know when it was, but actually I do know when it was because I looked up a Slate article on this topic.
Yeah, I read the same one. Mm-hmm.
This was about the server connection between the Donald Trump campaign servers in Fifth Avenue, New York, and Alpha Bank, which is mentioned in this thing, I guess headquartered in Moscow. And let me just, I went through this article kind of with a fine-tooth comb and took out some of the stuff that was important, I thought. So, Alpha Bank was founded by a Ukrainian named Mikhail Friedman. He hired a guy named Pyotr Ever. This is a Russian spelling, so... who had worked with Putin in the early 1990s and possibly protected Putin from allegations of corruption. Well, anyways, in July 2016, a Moscow bank started irregularly pinging a server at the Trump organization on Fifth Avenue. they said this. At first, they thought this could have been just like kind of Russian spam or malware attack or something like that. But then they said this wasn't. This was like the patterns indicated human level communication because it took place during office hours in New York and office hours in Moscow. So it seemed to be happening when people were awake at both ends.
Right.
And it was not like constant. It was like kind of like it was more like a human back and forth communication.
Mm-hmm.
It was a closed mail server. The investigators at, I guess, Slate.com, the newspaper that was the online publication that was reporting this, they tried to ping the Trump server as well, and they couldn't do it. So you had to it was a private server. You had to be able to, you had to know your way in to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. New York Times started investigating this, and let's see, 87% of the messages came from Alpha Bank, or we assume they were messages. We don't know what was transmitted on it. Some sort of information was being transmitted back and forth, and apparently 87% of the messages that came into the Trump server were from Alpha Bank.
Mm-hmm.
Communication was in a quote-unquote secretive fashion, so I don't know what that means, but they, I sound like I'm Mr. Robot over here. I have no idea what half of this stuff means exactly. But it doesn't sound good, right? It just doesn't sound good. And the people who were interviewed in the article were computer security experts, and they were very clear that something was not normal about this.
Mm-hmm.
After the New York Times began contacting Alpha Bank in Moscow, the Trump server was crudely severed on the Trump end, and a new server was set up under a new name. And the first and only contact that came to the new server was from Alpha Bank. Again, they tried to ping this thing, and they couldn't get in, they couldn't access it. So, and they said that this is important because when there's a new server like this set up with a new name, you can't just randomly contact it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know who you're contacting exactly. So it's not like just anybody could just happen to randomly ping this thing. That somebody on the Trump side had to tell the Alpha Bank about the new server before they could start contacting it. So this was an article that I remember during the campaign that I, up until after the election, I just kept thinking, like, whatever happened with that? Did they ever do a follow-up on that? What was going on with that? Like, the Trump computers were contacting a Russian bank. That's a story. What the hell was going on there?
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of fell off the radar, and everybody was posting all these things about, I don't know, just how they felt about the election, or, what it means for America, or just kind of these, like, I don't know. This was a story that just kind of fell by the wayside, and now the fact that the Alpha Bank name comes up again in this communication, I've seen people try to discredit this thing by saying, well, 4chan took credit for it. They said this was just their thing.
Yeah, but I read something on Gizmodo that said that was not correct either. That 4chan was trying to take credit for this where they didn't. So
Specifically that 4chan had just like made it up or something.
Yeah.
This was all not a real story. It's a bunch of shit. I mean, Alpha Bank is a real thing. It was already documented that they had some sort of improper communication with the Trump campaign. Mm-hmm. And the fact that that's coming up in this intelligence that has been, given to both Trump and Obama by the heads of the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and the Director of National Intelligence means, no, this was not some bullshit 4chan thing. This was a real thing that was happening. And that's why Alpha Bank's name is coming up in this report again.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, that's a huge aspect of it. It's not just a bunch of, people pissing on each other, although that's, I don't know. There's this guy, he just shouldn't be our president.
Mm-hmm.
He's up to something.
Well, and it, like you were kind of alluding to earlier, this report, fills in a lot of blanks for us, because as much as Trump flip-flops on so many issues, one thing he never flip-flops on is his constant flattery of Putin and his intelligence and strength. That's something that you'll never hear him waver on, whereas he'll take both sides of every issue within the same sentence sometimes. So a little suspicious, just given the fact of how wishy-washy he is on every other thing. But now this, if they have something on him of this level, I mean, what couldn't they make him do? So
yeah, and I also saw some people somewhere on Facebook saying that, well, Russia denies it. They say they don't have any intelligence on Trump. It's like people are just they're so stupid. They're just they'll believe whatever they want. They have the outcome that they want to have in their mind, and then they'll just latch on to any evidence that supports that. And it's like, oh, well, the Russians said they didn't do it. Oh, the Russians said they didn't do it? Well, right now it's not advantageous for them to admit that they have any blackmail intel on Trump.
Yeah, and the only way we would ever see this blackmail is if he runs afoul of them, which so far hasn't happened, and I don't really know what would cause him to, go against them, I guess. But who knows? I mean, maybe somebody will leak it on their end, so who knows?
Well, one thing I can say is that if this is a true story, I mean, people need to be watching out for dead prostitutes to start turning up in Moscow.
Well, we already know that Putin's not above, disappearing his political opponents, so I can't imagine the life of a Russian prostitute is worth much to him, so...
Yeah, especially when any day one of them could come forward and say, yeah, I was in the room with Trump and this is what happened. I mean, if this is a real thing that happened, those people's lives are... I mean, they may already be dead. My God, I mean, I don't think I'm going too far out in the conspiracy land to say this. I mean,
well, no, I mean, you look at some of the journalists that have ended up dead in Russia and other places that are, critical of the Kremlin. Like there was that, I forget his name, but the guy that had some radioactive isotope put in his tea or something, and then there was the other guy who got shot on the street in front of the Kremlin, and no one at broad daylight, and no one's arrested for it, and so this happens. We know this happens.
I think there was a female reporter who was shot in or in front of her apartment, too, somewhere in Russia. Yeah, it happens.
Which is just all the more disturbing that the Republicans, like you kind of been saying, have just been sitting on their hands about this just because it turned out that they won the election because of it. It's, I hate to be on the same side of any issue as John McCain and Lindsey Graham, but, at least they're, questioning this a little harder than most Republicans seem to. They just seem to be fine with this, which is amazing given that this is the party of Reagan, that we have to convince them that Russia doesn't have our best interest in mind. It's like, aren't you guys supposed to be the first ones on this issue?
Yeah, that's something I think we talked about before during the debates, was that Hillary Clinton sounds more hawkish on Russia and foreign policy than the Republican candidate does, which is unprecedented in my lifetime. I think. I mean, it's always been the Republicans who've been crazy about Russia.
Yeah, I mean, she's the one that was talking about the no-fly zone over Syria and that's pretty hardline stance compared to what Trump was talking about, so. Yeah,
and I want to say about that, I mean, I hear a lot of liberals saying, oh, well, Hillary Clinton's going to get us into a hot war with Russia by trying to impose a no-fly zone over Syria. It's going to cause a nuclear war. But come on, no, it's not. We could shoot down a dozen Russian planes over Syria, and it wouldn't probably start a nuclear war. And that's assuming that they would keep flying after we shot the first one or two down, and that's assuming we even would shoot them down.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Turkey already shot one down intentionally, and I don't know. So I don't buy that. Like I said, I've been a Bernie bro since pretty near the beginning of his campaign. Not right at the beginning, but pretty near it. And that aspect of it just never really washed with me. This thing that Hillary Clinton's going to start World War III and Donald Trump wouldn't or something. So, let's see. I've got more notes here about various things to talk about with this, because I think there's a lot. I mean, over the past 2 days, there's been a lot going through my head about what the implications of this are and what the correct response is.
Oh, yes.
I just okay. Let's see. I think we're kind of slowly coming to the point where I want to talk about journalism and the role of journalism and journalistic responsibilities and this stuff that is uniquely in your wheelhouse, but I definitely have an opinion on too. So, I mean, well, okay, number one, people have been saying this is fake news. I mean, Donald Trump said it's fake news. Everybody's saying it's fake news. And I think there's an important distinction between fake news and this. This is unverified news, and I would say I think that probably a lot of the news we get is unverified. I mean, and when you do a podcast or when you do anything, I mean, I'm sure when you do any kind of reporting, you realize very quickly how few statements you can make categorically. I mean, there are things that we know in our day-to-day life, but if you have to say them and you have to push back on people who are going to disagree with them, you realize, okay, well, I know this is true, but I've got to actually go out and like detail the sources for it and find things to point to that confirm it, because otherwise it's just my word against somebody else's.
Well, that term fake news has gotten weaponized pretty quickly by the people it was meant to put in their place. I mean, I feel like it's almost a useless term now, because it's basically just come to mean any news that I don't like is fake news, at least the way Trump uses it. So
I don't think it's a useless term, but I think the Republicans have always been very good at weaponizing any kind of term, even with just the word liberal, turning it into a pejorative and stuff.
Yeah, right.
So I don't, it's kind of like, it's kind of like how words that people use in a negative way. I mean, like, idiot used to be like a medical term, but then it became an insult. Or how, retarded or something, or simple, or these kinds of words used to be, have just a medical term, basically.
Clinical
but then
meaning.
It became used as insults, and then it's mentally handicapped, and then it's differently abled, and then it's this constant evolution of words, because other people are appropriating the words in negative ways. Just like, at some point, you just gotta say, look, no matter what name we give this, people are going to continue to misappropriate it, and so we're not going to change our language usage based on what other people are going to do with it. And I think fake news, I see it every day on Facebook. It's these people, Hillary Clinton has Parkinson's disease. Hillary Clinton's going to die in 6 months. I mean, and these things are coming from websites that are designed to look like real news websites. But 95% of the content on them is vile, just right-wing fantasy dressed up to look like news. And it's a poor excuse for even looking like news. When you read the articles, it's a bunch of invective and opinion mixed in with things that are completely false, quote-unquote facts. That's what fake news is. A report that has been vetted to the degree that it's able to be vetted and has been presented to the outgoing and incoming president is not the same as something you're going to see on InfoWars. It's just not.
Right.
It's not. I mean, you could say these are different degrees of fake. It's not fake news. It's just news that has not been confirmed.
Yeah, it's also really rich to see people like Alex Jones very concerned about this quote-unquote fake news of this report when, of all the crazy things that he pushes, like the Sandy Hook thing was a hoax and so on and so forth. It's like the purveyor of fake news is all of a sudden very concerned about veracity.
Yeah, it's everything's a joke in this country now. But I would say this isn't fake news. I mean, if you're a reporter and you talk to a source that you trust, you can report that and say this comes from an anonymous source, and he happens to be, in the past he's been a reliable source, so we are treating it as real info. I mean, we don't know about this guy's past, but he runs a company that deals with corporate and governmental espionage. He runs that company. I checked out their website earlier today, and they're very concerned with, their image and their credibility, their credentials, their history, their, this kind of stuff, their discretion. I mean, these are not people who are just, these people, they have they have a stake in the game. They're not just throwing out random stuff to see what sticks. If they put this forward, you know, a lot of people would say, well, we can't trust anything that comes from the intelligence agencies. But the alternative is trusting Vladimir Putin. And, I don't know. So I would just say I think that's the difference between this and fake news, which is something that people have really been trying to muddy the waters with over the past 24 hours. So. What would you say is the what's the journalistic take on this? I mean, because obviously BuzzFeed is not a traditional news organization.
Right.
They're not somebody with the pedigree of like a CNN or a Fox News even, or an ABC or pick your poison. They're not a big news. I mean, what is the...
It's a thorny issue for sure, and I think if Gawker was still around, I think he would have seen this a lot earlier. I think this was definitely a story Gawker would have been all over months ago, and you probably would have already maybe had some independent sourcing of some of this stuff by now, because it would have been out for so long. But you're right, BuzzFeed, they do have some legit news. McKay Coppins is one of the best political reporters out there, and he works for BuzzFeed, so they do have some credibility. But there is also a stigma around BuzzFeed that, it's just cat GIFs and GIFs or whatever. So they have a little less credibility to lose just because people kind of side-eye them anyway. So I felt like they kind of know that they're one of the maybe outside players in this game in some ways, and they have a little less credibility to lose, which is kind of why you saw them approaching this differently than CNN, who's more of a legacy media company as much as there is one. So I think that they have a little more...
I would say I've seen people say today, well, this releasing things like this, it further damages the image of journalism, which has taken a real beating in the 2016 campaign. And I'm thinking, yeah, but you're coming at this the wrong way. Real journalism has taken a real beating this year because you don't publish shit like this when everybody in Washington, D.C. and New York knows about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sitting on some information that the American voter could use to inform their decision, and you don't report it, and you don't hurt Donald Trump, but you do every single day. You talk about whatever the hell any random Republican is saying about Hillary Clinton's emails and shit.
Right.
She had some problems there, but the answer to me is more transparency, not less transparency.
Sure. Well, and I would be a complete hypocrite if I didn't also say that in my reporting, I've also reviewed the DNC emails. I've reviewed the Podesta emails. I've written some columns, including some things from that. So that is also leaked information that could have been doctored. I don't know. WikiLeaks just dumps it. They don't have any verification process. So who knows if this has been doctored. So I have in the past engaged in reporting that used leaks, that other people brought. Now, granted, I wasn't the person that it was leaked to. I think that's an important distinction. WikiLeaks was the one that took the hit in that case. In this case, it was BuzzFeed. In other cases, it was, you want to take it to Snowden. He gave his stuff to Glenn Greenwald. He reported it first, you know what I mean, and Laura Poitras and that. So, I mean, there are reporting that has been done based on leaks in the past, and that's a real thing, and I don't think we should say that that's fake news just because it came from a source that we can't identify readily, because we don't know who necessarily gave those to WikiLeaks. We think it's the Russians, but who knows if they tampered with them before they gave them. So, I mean, I have reported on that kind of stuff, so it is kind of a gray area. I personally probably wouldn't be the first. I'm glad that BuzzFeed took the hit on this, because you're right, it is important information. This was apparently disseminated all through Washington. Many high-level, officials and news journalists, had this document, but weren't reporting on it because they couldn't verify it. So, I mean, they took the hit. Now, if I was Donald Trump and I wanted to take them to court, I think I'd have a pretty good libel case, because unless they can prove this, he's probably got a pretty good case.
I could see that he loves to sue people too, and I've thought of that too. I said, my God, just the way people are carrying on Facebook and Twitter about this. I mean, libel case is like a no-brainer. I mean, it's just like his if we find out this is true or if we find out this is false, it doesn't even matter to me. In my mind, Donald Trump will always be the person who enjoys water sports in Russian hotels. I mean, forever. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't care. It doesn't matter. What's true and what's false anymore. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's if this election has proven anything, that's something. That's the zeitgeist now. It doesn't matter what's true or false. The sooner Democrats and mainstream media can get that through their heads, the sooner they'll be able to effectively fight this guy. But they can't fight them with one hand tied behind their back, talking about, well, we didn't confirm it and it's not true. You think the Republicans give a fuck if a rumor about Hillary Clinton is confirmed or not? Hell no. They're going to run with it and repeat it again and again and again. It's going to get stuck in, 46% of the population's brains. So to me, I mean, I'm sure you can't quite follow me down that rabbit hole because you're in the media, but I just think when it comes to political reporting, we've been in a post-truth world for a little while now, and all this hand-wringing about this, was it right to publish it? Was it right to leak it? I mean, it's out there. It's there now. You got to deal with it. So,
yeah, I mean, at this point, it's irresponsible not to address it because it is, like you said, it's in the atmosphere now, and whether or not it is true, he will always be known as the guy who enjoys getting peed on. That's going to be his legacy in the minds of the American public. So
probably how his hair and his skin gets that particular glow.
Somebody's really dehydrated then.
It all makes a lot more sense now. But yeah, I think a thing about publishing this is that, it's not. I mean, I saw Chris Engel, I think, being interviewed by somebody last night, and they said, well, they mentioned this, they brought up this story, and he's like, well, yeah, I mean, me and everybody in the news media and, in Washington, we've known about this for months, but we didn't report it. And I'm like, what the fuck were you doing? I mean, I know it's a rumor, but if this is getting briefed to the presidents, that lends a degree of credibility that means that, hey, frankly, I think the secrecy in Washington and stuff and all this classification stuff, I mean, Hillary Clinton with her private server and all this stuff, and did she or didn't she pass, classified information? And, she halfway made the argument that there's an overclassification problem. And
I think that's actually probably true. I think there's something to that.
I think that's true. Because we've all worked in organizations, and, something comes through your hands and you have the choice to classify or not classify. Why not, cover your ass and classify it? Why not? It doesn't hurt you, and if you don't do it and it should have been classified, then it's going to come back on you later. But the thing is, the American people cannot make the right decisions when we've got these elites in Washington and New York who have access to entire reams of information and rumor and what's really going on that us fucking yokels out in flyover country don't even fucking know.
Yeah.
I mean, how the fuck are we supposed to have a functioning democracy? This is what the media is for, to keep the American people informed. I mean, am I wrong about that?
No, you're right. And if you want to look at the most disgusting example of kind of the chumminess between these establishment journalists and the government they're supposed to be adversarial with, is look no further than the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That is kind of the orgy of no ethics as far as like, oh, it's just because it kind of just makes it into a big game. It's just like, oh, we're all on the same side, and it's like, no, you shouldn't be on the same side. You should be publishing things these people don't want to all the time. So I know you guys got some good jabs in at me last year, and I declined interviews and stuff, but hey, we're all here smiling and having a good time at the end of the day. Yeah, it's like it's kind of disgusting when you think about what their job should be. And these organizations, they want to maintain the possibility that they could get an interview at any time. Yeah, and exactly.
I would have more respect for CNN today if they published some shit that would be so damaging to Donald Trump that he would never go on their program again, and he would say that. And they didn't try to come crawling back to him to get an interview later and apologizing and shit. I would have so much more respect for CNN if that's what they did, but that's not what they're going to do.
Yeah.
That's not what these major media conglomerates are designed to do. It's not in their DNA.
Yeah, and to kind of go back to that press conference I was talking about from yesterday, Trump is already treating CNN as if they did the exact same thing as BuzzFeed, so it wasn't even in their interest to not publish it. They got scooped on it because they were trying to maintain some kind of credibility, but then when Jim Acosta from CNN, the White House correspondent for CNN, tries to ask a question during this press conference, Trump just shouts him down as fake news and moves on to someone else from Breitbart, of all places, and it's like...
You're being rude. Stop being rude. Stop being rude.
Yeah.
I'm not going to answer your question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, not you. Not you. Your organization's terrible. Let's go. Go ahead. Quiet. Go ahead. She's asking a question. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question. You are fake news. Go ahead.
I don't know if you want to go into the press conference, but that was just crazy. He filled the room with paid staffers who clapped and cheered for everything he said. And the law firm that announced his disentanglement, such as it was from the Trump organization, which is a joke, that is a law firm that was named Russia's top law firm in 2016. You can't make this stuff up. And then he had a table of documents supposedly talking about all the things he'd signed to disentangle himself, but the reporters weren't allowed to look through them, and people are speculating now that those were just blank pieces of paper in unmarked folders. So it was just all theater.
The first time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And to be fair to the, I did see on Snopes earlier today that the law firm that he's dealing with there, they themselves weren't named Russia's #1 legal thing or something, but their branch office in Moscow or something was. Or something. So it was kind of like a subdivision of, or like a kind of a subsidiary of the main law office or something. So that's a little bit more nuanced there. I just want to get that in.
Okay.
But I mean, what's the Rex Tillerson or something? Is a friend of Russia or whatever. He
got the Order of Friendship from Vladimir Putin, which is basically one of the highest civilian honors that a foreigner can get from Russia. So.
And when you can't not mention that when you talk about the fact that is Donald Trump already doing things on behalf of Russia, like appointing this guy Secretary of State? What the hell does he know about international diplomacy? He knows about oil. That's what he knows about. He knows about oil, and apparently he knows a good deal about Russia too.
And ExxonMobil isn't gonna put up a stink if a local despot wants to do some dirty deeds. They just want the oil. They just want the money, Lebowski. They're not gonna they're not concerned about diplomacy or fostering democracy in far off lands. That doesn't affect their bottom line. All they want is the ability to go in there and excavate and get the oil out of the ground. That's all they're caring about. So he doesn't care about the ethical concerns we might have with Putin. So. Yeah.
Anyways, I think all of these things are just it's all right there, but something approaching 50% of the American population has been pre-programmed not to listen to facts or reality anymore. They're not interested. They want to dismiss any kind of evidence that goes against their guy reflexively. And I don't know. So I do think like these kind of these big media conglomerates that just I don't know. I just think they're going to lose because people want information. Information is disseminated in different ways today. And another thing about this is the fact that this is out there and it's public now. This is. But, you can say, well, we didn't want to report it until it's verified. You can't verify this kind of stuff. I mean, unless Russia releases video from inside the hotel room, you can't, how are you going to verify it? Unless the Russian, it's just, it can't be verified. You're never going to verify it. So if your criteria for releasing information that could have affected the outcome of the election and could have let the American people potentially make a more informed decision with their votes. If you're conditioned for releasing that, when it applies to Trump, not when it applies to the Democrat. If your condition is that it has to be verified, well, then it's just never going to happen. But now that it's out there in the public, now that we've got citizen journalists, now that we've got interested parties, now that we've got the intelligence agencies of America probably in a position where they realize they're going to have to go hard after this evidence and find out what actually happened, this is how this is going to be. If it's going to be found out, this is how it's going to be found out. It wasn't going to be found out by keeping it under wraps and letting the Glitterati in New York and Washington just keep it amongst themselves. So for journalism, it's actually good that this is made public, because that means that there's probably thousands of people in America and around the world who have a vested interest in finding out what the hell is actually going on now, where before they didn't even know anything was going on.
And you have to imagine, if he was this reckless in Moscow, it couldn't be the first time that he'd done something just as reckless overseas where he was being monitored. There has to be other occasions where he was out of his own element in a hotel room where it was bugged somewhere, where this or something like it happened. It has to be true. If that's true, this can't be. I seriously doubt he found out about water sports for the first time this one occasion in Moscow. Like, they brought out a menu and he was like, "Oh, you can do that?" Like, I'm sure he already had this idea in his head because he'd done it before. If it's true, of course. Yeah. But I think he's a sick dude, and I think his attitudes towards women have been well documented before this. So, I mean, consenting adults can do whatever the hell they want, wherever. But, like, if you're a public figure and you're going to another country, and you're going to Russia, of all countries, probably the only country in the world I can think of that would be more likely to have bugs in your room would be probably North Korea. That's exactly what I was going to say next. Yeah.
I mean, when Russians are notorious for the honey trap. I mean, this is in their wheelhouse. I mean, this is like, you watch the Americans, it's like this is happening constantly or something. I watched that show like first 2 seasons or something, and then I kind of fell out of it. But this is what Russians are known for. When you think of Russian spycraft, the seductive Natalia character or something, and in the video, I mean, this is...
Yeah.
Donald Trump is a person we can imagine doing this, and Russia is imminently a state that we can imagine doing this. So, I mean, and maybe you could say, well, if the CIA is just doing if they're just making this all up, of course they're going to make the details look plausible. But, some people have said maybe this is the intelligence agencies making firing a shot across the bow of Donald Trump and saying, hey, you better take us seriously or we're going to wreck you. But
he has to know at this point, at least I hope he knows, that there has to be counteragents in Russia working with our intelligence, just as we know the opposite is true for us. It just has to be true. There's always that element in the spycraft of the double agent. So, they're going to work to, he's basically burned all the intelligence agencies before he's even taken office. And you're right. This is probably them trolling him to a certain degree, being like, look, this is just the beginning. If you think that this is bad, we can get you on so many other things. So,
yeah, and I think there could also be an element of, okay, this guy's really going to become president. We know this information is out there, and we know that this is already affecting his decision making regarding Russia. We're going to try to neutralize this information as quickly as possible so that he can't be blackmailed by it as much, to such a great degree in the future, because it'll already be known. And so I'm not, I have no idea, but I can imagine that being also a thing. Look, we're just going to get this information out there so that the blackmail quotient goes down to some degree. I mean, you can't eliminate it, because if a video comes out, it's all over for him.
Yeah. There's no way to unsee certain things, and that's going to be a hard image to unsee for all of us if that does come out. So.
I hope it does.
Yeah, me too.
I don't want to see it, but I want to see it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Exactly the way I feel.
Yeah. So I mean, like, now you had linked to something about kind of like the Associated Press, the APs.
Oh, well, that was the Society of Professional Journalists. Their ethics board has a blog that they do about journalistic ethics. Yeah, that was the thing I linked to.
Okay. You know who I look forward to? I look forward to Matt Taibbi's take on this from Rolling Stone. Have you read him before?
I have, yeah. I read a book by him called The Great Derangement, and I've read some articles in Rolling Stone. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think he's a great journalist. I think I've been reading him since at least 2005 or 2006. I remember at the job I was working at that time, I would read his articles sometimes, like, because I was just working overnight shifts all the time and stuff, and so I could just kind of, like, read the news and stuff, and I was trying to be as politically aware as I could during the mid to late Bush years. But he's a great journalist. He turns a phrase, and like, I've seen interviews with him, and he's not quite as charming in person or whatever, but with the written word, he's very good. I'll still never forget, there was some quote he had in one of his articles where he was talking about, like, the American public can watch Tony Soprano be a tough guy every day on TV, and they can convince themselves they're tough guys. In the meantime, Osama bin Laden is still doing bong hits in a cave somewhere. So, it's like, whoa, this is some. I mean, it just painted such a wild picture, such a vivid picture. I was like, I'll never forget that line. I mean, I can't remember how it went exactly, but it was a great.
That's funny.
It was just a. But Matt Taibbi was a guy, he lived and worked in Russia for some time.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good point, yeah.
And so I imagine he has, number one, he fucking hates Donald Trump. He can't stand Republicans. And number two, he knows the Russian mindset. So, and he's got experience over there. So I would love to, I can't wait to read his take on all of this, because I'm sure it'll be very insightful.
Yeah. Another journalist I would watch out for, I don't know if she's commented on this yet, but Masha Gessen, she's a great journalist from Russia who's living in exile. She had a article in the New York Review of Books right after the election called something about how to survive an autocrat, basically comparing, her experience in Putin's Russia to what we may be experiencing very soon and already started experiencing with Trump. So she'll be another one to watch for. Also, Gary Kasparov, the chess champion, he's been pretty good on Russia stuff. He's got a book I want to read called Winter is Coming, so want to hear what they have to say for sure. So
I actually just listened to an interview with Gary Kasparov on what was it called? It was a podcast. It was
it Sam Harris?
The Sam Harris's, yeah, exactly. Waking Up podcast he has. It's pretty good. I think I listen to it sometimes. I don't go quite as far as he does in some ways, but I think he's a pretty smart guy. He clearly thinks very carefully about. He puts a lot of thought into his opinions, and some of his opinions are obviously controversial, and he may go a little bit far in some cases. But I think he's an interesting guy. But yeah, he talked to Gary Kasparov for an hour or two there, and it was good, and interesting, and clearly the guy's a smart guy. So
yeah, for sure. I heard that one too. It's a good one. Well, I actually have to go to work now, but if you want to, we can pick this up tomorrow morning. I'll have more time, and I'm sure we'll have more to talk about. Okay. So
sure. Well, I don't know how much more I have to say about this. I think we've actually done a very good job of covering basically everything I wanted to get to today.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Although tomorrow's a whole nother news cycle, so we'll see what tomorrow brings us, right?
Exactly. Do you want to tease our book club before we go?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to tease our book club a little bit?
Oh yeah. We're Bob and I are currently working on another episode, and it's taking perhaps a little bit longer than I'd like. But I recently, in South Korea, at an English language bookstore, I came across a copy of a book that I had read back in university as a joke, which was Bill O'Reilly's "Those Who Trespass." I think it's called like a story of television and murder.
A novel of television and murder, yes.
A novel of television and murder. And you've probably heard that thing about, hey baby, why don't you put down that pipe and get my pipe up, or whatever. Yeah. Read in his doofy voice or whatever. That comes from this book. So if you want to hear some dirty sex talk from Bill O'Reilly, and who doesn't, we'll be covering that in the coming weeks.
Exactly. So get ready for that, people. If you want to read along with us, go rush out to your local bookstore and get one of the many copies I'm sure is available of that book.
Yeah, in fact, I encourage our audience or our listeners to do that because, frankly, I'd love to finish this thing in a week or two, but I'm working a hellish shift right now. and it's just harder and harder to get. It's hard to get time to sit down and read the book. I'm going to try to do it, and I'm about 4, 5, 6 chapters in. But if you start reading the book now, when you hear this podcast, you'll probably be able to keep up with us in the reading of the book, and that'll give you that much more enjoyment when we actually come to the end and we discuss
there's some
contents of the book.
There's notable passages on practically every page. So
it's a window into a man's soul.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Depending on what happens today, we may talk again. But either way, we'll be reading up on the man of letters, Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah. Well, anyways, listeners, keep listening to the news. Keep watching this thing. Keep holding Donald Trump's feet to the fire. This is not a non-story. This is a story that needs to be covered and responded to responsibly. If we're all speaking Russian in 4 years, ask yourself what you did.
Yeah, exactly.
At the time of this story.
And in the meanwhile, I'm going to have to figure out how to turn the explicit warning on for this episode, maybe. Yeah, we might have to do that, but anyways. Well, Bob, I know you got to go to work here, so I'll let you get going, but rock over London, rock on Chicago. Mitsubishi, the word is getting around. All right, thanks, Joe. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, yeah, Bob. Bye-bye.
If you enjoy this podcast, there are several ways to support it. I have a Patreon account, which can be found at www.patreon.com/Rob Burgess Show Patreon. I hope you'll consider supporting in any amount. Also, please make sure to comment, follow, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast everywhere it's available, which includes iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Facebook, Twitter, Internet Archive, TuneIn, and RSS. It really helps. The official website for the podcast is www.therobburgesshow.com. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, www.thisburgess.com. Until next time.